Here we are again with conversions, the story of how people met Christ. And my name is Wesley Campbell. I'm in Redding, California right now with a beautiful friend of mine, Sir William Hart. Sir William Hart. He's kind of like, kind of British, when they, because he's famous. And he is the world director of Iris Global, the missions organization, Heidi and Roland Baker. That's all over the world. They have 35 to 50, 75 bases. They have planted thousands and thousands of churches all around the world. And when I met Will, he didn't have any hair on his face, okay? He looked like a cherub. He was something like out of those, those paintings, just this beautiful little, woo. And so I think he's put some hair on his face, so now he can look a little more rugged.
Become a real
manly. So here we are. And by the way, I want you to make sure you check out all their information. Share this with everybody. Will Hart, what's your website?
Ministries.com, but I rarely use it. Go to my Instagram, Will Hart Min or
Will
Iris
Hart
Global.
Min,
Yep.
or Iris Global.
Yeah.
IrisGlobal.com. And you're going to find out all about it. So here we go. We're going to jump into it. So Will Hart.
Hey.
Here you are.
Yeah.
How old are you right now?
Just turned 39 a couple weeks ago.
Wow, you're almost at the big 40.
I know.
How many kids?
Got 3.
3 kids. A beautiful wife from Brazil.
Paraguay.
Paraguay, sorry.
Close but no cigar. It's okay.
And her name is?
Musi.
Now, how did you get the name Musi?
Her real name is Reseda,
Reseda.
as some of us Americans say it. And when she was my wife's father is a famous singer was a famous singer in Paraguay. And when she would cry as a baby, they would say, "Oh, the music has started." And music in Spanish is música, so they shorten it to Musi.
That's amazing.
It's just,
And she's that ever since.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
Musi, yeah.
So you are a fanatic, radical, missionary, out there guy, great preacher. This guy is so good at preaching. He's so funny. I mean, you got to hear his preaches. How can they get your preaches?
I don't have any for sale, so it's you got to go over the
YouTube?
internet. Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's stuff on YouTube.
Listen to Will Hart. I mean, he's really, really good. But
Thank you.
Okay, you were not always that way.
No, I was definitely not that way.
Okay, so let's start. Where were you born?
Born and raised in a small town, an island north of Boston called Gloucester.
Gloucester.
Gloucester, Massachusetts.
Sounds a bit Scottish.
It's English. I think English, like Gloucester cheese.
Gloucester, yeah.
Gloucester.
Okay, so what's small? Describe small.
You can drive around in about an hour.
Okay, so it's an island.
Yeah.
And how many towns on that island?
There's 2, Gloucester and a teeny little place called Rockport.
How many in Gloucester? How many people live there?
Gosh, I don't even know. I honestly don't know.
Like 10,000?
60,000?
60,000?
Maybe?
Okay.
30,000? I don't know, something like that.
So that's where you were born and raised. And were your parents believers?
Mom got saved when I was really young. And I remember when Jesus came into our house.
Okay. How young?
I think I was 3 or 4.
Okay, so she wasn't a believer and your father wasn't a believer when they were married.
Correct. They met at a tennis match and they were introduced because they were drinking the same beer.
Okay.
So
what beer was it?
I think it was Ballantine Ale.
Okay, there you go. Valentine Ale. Whoa.
Ballantine Ale, yeah.
Okay, so your mom and dad met. They're not followers of God.
No, brilliant families, thinkers, philosophy.
Really?
Like I have my uncle's a professor of philosophy, like brilliant people, Harvard.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's why you're so smart.
I'm definitely not. I did not get that, but that's my mom's side. My dad's side, you got the spiritualists. You have I have an uncle who's like Swami something.
Swami.
Yeah. Yes.
So they're into the spirit.
Yeah, I got that on my dad's side.
Yeah.
And then I got the intellectual on my mom's side.
So your mom gets saved, or was it a radical conversion?
I believe all conversions are radical, Wesley.
Okay.
But she got saved listening to the radio. So both my mom and dad are artists, kind of hippie artists.
Okay.
Like my mom, hippie artists. They both went to art school, both have masters in arts.
Okay.
And so, my mom was home painting one day. I was off at school, and she was listening to the radio.
You were at school?
I think so, for kindergarten or whatever, fourth grade or something like that. I do. Here's what I remember. If I ask my mom, she can give me the answer. But I remember coming home from school one day and being like, "Mom, make me a snack." And she was crying by her radio. I have a vivid memory walking into my mom's art studio, and she was just weeping, and she had met Jesus while listening to Christian radio that day. Yeah. And everything changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you were a little tight. Could have been kindergarten. Could have been grade 1.
Yeah. I just remember being very small.
Okay.
And I have that memory of watching her weep at the radio.
Did she tell you what happened?
She met Jesus. She listened to the radio, met Jesus. I think she was maybe around some people, but it was, every time I've asked her, it was the radio. And then right after that, she ended up at a tent revival meeting downtown that the local Assemblies of God put on.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And
that's when she got baptized in the Spirit.
Oh, baptized in the Spirit.
Yes. And that's when things went, woo! Yeah. Hey, like everything changed. Like I have vivid memories of getting hauled around to like Sunday schools, like different Sunday schools, like being dropped off and like crying because I was scared. I'd never been to anything like that before. And my mom was like trying to find a church. And so I have these like glimpses of memories of like being in all the different little churches on our island and not knowing why we were there and hating every minute of
Really?
it. Yeah.
You hated it?
I hated it because we no longer, I remember like Halloween was Satan, right?
Yeah.
I grew up watching the Smurfs.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if people,
Blue.
Yeah. Papa Smurf was Satan, right? Like, and now I couldn't watch the Smurfs anymore. I couldn't do Halloween. I couldn't, I didn't have my weekends free anymore.
Oh yeah.
We were
Sundays
going to
were
churches.
Just a major intrusion.
Yeah, oh yeah. And so I remember everything changing when my mom and my dad, he held out.
He held out.
Yeah, he didn't get saved immediately.
He just said no.
I just think they were like these hippies, right? Yeah. So I was like, she's on her journey of love. And I'm just going to like support her on the journey of love.
So how long did he hold out for?
I feel like my mom's told me like 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, like and it was a slow burn on my dad. But when he got it, I can look back at the time that I lived in the house with them, and I could see the transformation of my father. Yeah.
You watched your own father transform.
Yeah, it was I don't remember when he got saved. I just remember watching him grow and grow and grow and grow more.
Really?
Yeah, in the Lord.
Now, did that make an impact on you?
At the time, no. At the time, the only impact was I hate Christianity. And then I grew up around it, grew up in it, and I wasn't the biggest fan. I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of issues with it. And yeah.
So as soon as you're kind of old enough to understand what's going on, you're in this Christian environment that you don't want to be in.
Like I did because I had friends, but I didn't because it was pretty dumb.
Yeah, pretty boring.
Yeah.
And Sundays and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and it was a Calvinist, Congregationalist church that we ended up going to.
Right.
But my parents were closet charismatics because she got saved, baptized, Spirit-filled. So my mom had that early on, and she never let that go.
Okay.
But we were in a Congregationalist Calvinist church, wooden pews, organ.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. And
how many people?
Oh, man, probably like 150.
So no pretty girls.
Listen, there's always pretty girls. I don't know, but yeah, no, not.
There were no pretty girls in my brethren church. I'll tell you that much.
There was a lot of old people. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Like old people.
Oh, okay. So you're growing up now. Do you have any spiritual experiences before you actually get saved?
Oh my God, I did.
Tell me about this.
Okay, so the first one that I can remember, I've had a few. The first one that I remember, I was 9.
Okay,
and my mom took us to an Assemblies of God that was about 45 minutes away. So this is Massachusetts, early 80s, or late 80s, early 90s, okay? There wasn't a lot of Spirit-filled stuff going on, and the stuff that was going on was weird. It was just super creepy. But every so often, you know what I'm talking about? Like, you've been to those meetings where it's like, hey, I'm Spirit-filled, and I'm in Maine, or I'm Spirit-filled, and I'm in Vermont, and you kind of converge, and there's like, headdresses, Native American headdresses and wedding dresses, and like some dude with bagpipes and like, like I don't know. Like we had that where I was growing up. But like 9 years old, I remember going to the Assemblies of God. This 45 minutes away. So we would leave our first church because it was only like a 30-minute service. Yeah. And we would book it out to this other church so my mom could get her charismatic fix.
Okay.
And she was on fire. Like that was the one thing I love about my mom. Like she never lost the fire and the zeal. And she was like this hippie person. So when you took the charismatic, combined it with like this earthy, crunchy hippie freedom and on fire, like she became this flagger, artsy, like a glow. Like I'd be at a glow meetings. Like I have vivid memories.
She's a glow.
At a glow meetings. We're like, she wasn't just like a glow. She would
flaming.
She would build the prayer like room temple with like altars and flowing garments and like linens and it would like she was the one that would create the altar prayer room.
Oh boy.
Like with a painting of a lamb, like wearing a crown.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we've seen all those.
Okay, so that was my mom.
Okay.
Like she was that woman.
Okay.
Like I have a memory of coming home and her painting pomegranates. Gold.
That's like the seed. The pomegranate is the seed. It's like salvation. So many seeds in one pomegranate.
And I love it. Like people think I'm making fun of her.
No, you're not.
She was one of the hungriest people I've ever met.
Wow.
And the fruit is she has 3 children that are in full-time ministry, love the Lord, serving in missions.
So we got to add that before we carry on here because it gets worse. I mean, this guy gets worse.
No.
But so she's got 3 full-time.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
God, what's your mom's name?
Martha.
And Martha.
Yeah.
God bless you, Martha.
And all 3 of us went away from the Lord. And we all got saved 1 year. But listen, I'm getting too ahead of it. So 9 years old, we're at a church. Mm-hmm. Mom's like just turbo excited to be there and get her infilling. Okay. So she runs up, sits in the front of the church.
Yeah.
We're all in the back.
Right.
Because she's just like, yeah. And I remember the preacher. He looked like the Colonel Sanders. He was doing the circuit. Like he was one of the circuit.
Itinerants.
Yeah, itinerant guys. Come through once a year. He's doing his thing and he would croon and preach. Like I just remember he would just be like, do 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 ba Holy Ghost. And he would do that. And I remember, I'm just gonna fast forward this. I just remember him doing an altar call. He'd be like, who wants this? And my mom goes, me. And she runs up. And this is like the first memory that I have of like entering in. Like I wasn't just on the floor drawing with crayons.
Yeah.
Being like, why are people freaking out around me? And I'm watching, and I watch him start laying hands on people and they fall over. I freak out. I start screaming. I realize that he's going to end up praying for my mom. I don't want that. I drop to the floor and I like crawl to the aisle. And I'm looking down the aisle and I can see my mom. And I watch him pray for my mom. She falls down. I freak out. I start crying. And she gets up after 5 minutes. She's intoxicated, to say the least, right? Just in love.
Yeah.
Just God,
enraptured.
Yes. Got out of the stuffy church, full of the Spirit, just feeling his presence. And I meet her at the aisle about halfway down. I'm like, Mom, are you okay? I'm crying. And she goes, William, do you want to meet the Holy Spirit? And I looked at my mom, I was like, no. Like, no way. Let's go. Like, this place is full of psychopaths. And she grabbed my hand and she hauled me down to the front. And as I'm about halfway there, I start screaming, like, because I'm petrified. And she looks at me and she goes, oh, he's getting touched by the Holy Spirit. And she just double times me, chucks me up in front of this man. And he prays for me, and I fall out under the power of the Holy Spirit. That was my first encounter.
And you actually did fall out.
Yes.
You felt the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
But you felt a power come on you.
Yeah. And I didn't like it at all. It was freaky. It was weird. And I had a few other encounters after that. There's one that I had at it's not Tony Robbins, Tim Story.
Yeah.
Like years ago. I must have been 10 maybe. Mm-hmm. My mom hauled me there. He's preaching, and the power of the Holy Spirit fell on me, and I ran forward. And I remember...
You ran forward this time.
Yeah. I just remembered this one. like a year or two ago. And I remember somebody scooping me up in their arms, and like they pulled me up on their lap. So I was small enough to like be like, okay, I'm going to grab this little kid. It was a woman, and she just prayed for me and stroked my hair as I wept in her arms. I don't know who this woman is. If you remember this, come find me.
irisglobal.com.
But so I have a couple of those encounters that I remember.
Okay.
But very few.
Now this didn't actually stick because you started to quite go into an alternative lifestyle.
Yeah. So my mom and I still debate over this because I say I wasn't saved. She says I was saved. I was just lost. But at 12 years old, I started to get a taste for them drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of drugs?
I did a lot.
All kinds?
Yeah. Nothing crazy. Like
but
I
12
didn't.
years old.
No. So like at 12, it was I started getting into pornography. And back then you had to like, this is not funny, but you had to like get 3 friends, like ride your bikes 10 miles to the store that had the old lady working that shift that you could like distract while another dude stole magazines, and then you ride 10 miles back and bury them, behind your house. That actually happened. But that was kind of where I was at.
12 years old.
12 years old, which I think a lot of boys would have the same experience. But then I started getting involved in drugs. I got diagnosed like I forget I probably have it still. Dyslexic. I got diagnosed.
You were dyslexic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Still?
It happens every so often. Yeah. I don't know if it's just age or I'm tired, but yeah, severe dyslexic. I had special needs. I had teachers that would follow me around from classroom to classroom, different seasons. I had, like my high school years, I had 2 special needs classes or 3 a day.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Special needs.
Like in the worst case, the kid would be in the corner, like with a helmet, like in that side. I was in the more like you're just dumb, like side of the classroom.
Right.
And I had a couple of teachers that would follow me around. Mrs. McConnell, she was one of them. I love that woman. And and so I was going to a bunch of, my parents did whatever they could to get me help, but in the middle I was diagnosed with like severe ADHD, dyslexia, and they put me
the best kind to make an evangelist revivalist.
Is that true?
Oh yeah, me too.
So diagnosed and put in those classes, and basically told I wasn't going to do a lot with my life. And
they told you that.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what you understood.
Yeah, and because I couldn't do school, I was failing most of my school, and when I was succeeding, it was because I had help from all these people around.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's from 12.
Mm-hmm. So started getting drugs, antidepressants right around that time.
Really?
Yep, because they put me on Wellbutrin, which was for ADD, but it was also an antidepressant. And I only learned this recently, that I was just told it was for ADD.
What's an antidepressant?
It makes you happy.
Okay, so it kind of mellows you?
Yeah, I just think it takes.
Is it like
It's like Valium.
Okay. I don't know any of those things.
It makes you not as depressed.
Okay.
It kind of lightens your mood.
Okay.
Takes the tension off.
So they would give you a diagnosis, but then you took more.
Well, yeah, from about 12 on, I started getting like speed and Ritalin. And so I started doing those things. I was on antidepressants. I was messing around with those. I'd take a little bit more than I needed, take less. So even at a young age, I started to self-medicate.
Okay.
And then I started smoking, and then I started stealing. I remember every second of the first moment I stole, and I became a kleptomaniac from about 12 to 17. I could not walk out of a store without something on my body.
You would steal
anything all the time, and at the worst, I would break into houses,
really,
bust car windows out, and take stuff from them. And yeah,
Did you have a compulsion to steal?
I did. And it started with my cousin on a trip. I was out there with him. We went to a store. We didn't have money. We stole it. And it started from that day. And there wasn't a day.
So you remember it was like a spirit.
I remember the moment it happened. I remember everything shifting in my mind where I said, I don't have to pay for stuff anymore. I'm going to steal whatever I want. And I got good at it.
Wow. Wow.
Up
Okay.
until I was 17.
So when did you start to get into your goth phase?
Yeah, let's talk about it. So I didn't have a lot of friends.
Really?
Yeah.
But you're a fun guy.
Not back then. I actually really, I didn't have many friends at all.
Really?
Yeah.
So you weren't like this. You're a funny
Not at
guy.
all. Not at all.
You're the life of a. You're
No.
a fun guy.
No. So like it's funny. Like I've never really had this conversation
I know
that's gone into depth.
No,
on
no
this.
one ever does. These conversion stories are.
I love this. I love this, Wesley. So I took 3 photography classes a day because I lived in the darkroom. Like I didn't have friends. My friends were either teachers that took an interest in me, or the friends that I did drugs with or smoked with.
Okay.
You know, like that was basically it. I had a few close friends, maybe from church, that I'd grown up with, and no matter where I was at in my life, they were going to be fine with me. But I didn't have too many close friends at all. I got into music at a young age. I started playing guitar, started getting into like darker music, like real demonic music.
Which ones? Which bands?
Oh, like there's so many. And
Give me 5.
Marilyn Manson,
Really?
Nirvana, Tool was a big one for me. Like I worshipped that band. I worshipped.
How do you spell that?
Tool, Tool.
Okay.
I worship Maynard James Keenan. Like he was my God for a long time. And Kurt Cobain, like when he died, it was crazy.
For me, it was Keith Green.
Oh, dude, I love Keith Green. So I started going down there, and listen, I know that people have all these theories about music. I know what music, how powerful music was in my life and for my heart, and I let that music overtake me as a teenager. And shape me and mold me. The darkness, you know, like I got kicked out of school I did a talent show where my band, we played, and we did a song called Prison Sex from the stage. And it was all about this guy being sodomized by his father. I sang that live at our school talent show. Yeah, they didn't like that. I got kicked out of a school for drugs previous to that. So I was just...
And there weren't many schools around.
So I was driving off the island to a closer, a town that had better like special needs care.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's the school that I was going to.
Okay.
And my parents couldn't pick me up, so I would take the train home every day after school. And so I had this time from getting out of school to whenever the train came and whenever the train landed and whenever I took the buses to actually get back home, I was high every day with whatever I could find. And I would steal drugs. I would drink bottles of Robitussin.
What's that?
Like cough syrup.
Okay.
Like
really?
Multiple bottles, yeah. And just do anything like just Dramamine. Do you know what Dramamine is for motion sickness? I'd take like 12 of them and hallucinate. Started doing mushrooms, started doing all the things. Anything I could get my hand on.
Now, did you change your appearance?
Yeah, I did. It was weird because I lived in this Christian house, right? And my parents wouldn't let me do certain things, but I did it secretly. So like if I was going to a show, we had this place called Art Space. And I would just tell them I'd be going downtown or I'd go to the library, but I'd be going to Art Space and listening to music. It was like this free music, free thinking, creative space where all the teenagers did drugs. Like I would go there. Yeah, and I would. For me, it would take on its greatest form when I was in music, surrounded by music, going to shows. It wasn't every day. My parents would not let me do that every day.
So did you dye your hair?
At times, I would do the fake spray. I did blue once, dark blue, like your shirt.
Right.
Once. They did not like that. And then I had the temporary stuff. You'd spray it in and wash it out because I didn't want to deal with my parents. My parents, this whole time, they didn't know I was doing drugs.
Wow.
Like I got really good at hiding. I got really good at lying.
Would you put your face white?
I mean, I did it like once or twice.
Okay.
Yes, but not all day every day.
Were those people that you...
Those were my friends. I was
Goths.
with them. Oh yeah, like yeah. We had a satanic altar like at my buddy's house, who was our drummer, amazing drummer.
So you had a band, and you were kind of into very metal-y,
dark, like hardcore, Boston underground hardcore scene.
Okay.
Dark, melodic, screaming.
And what did you play?
I played bass. I played guitar. I played bagpipes, And I learned bagpipes because of Korn. I know,
Yeah.
The lead singer of Korn plays bagpipes.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I was into those guys. That was another band that really influenced my life.
When he got saved, had you already got saved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're into that now. Fast forward, you're coming to the time. Where does the crisis, the crucible of salvation come for you?
I get
Go back. Yeah.
two things.
Yeah.
So I want to tell you when my father knew I was going to get saved before it ever happened.
Really?
There's three moments I need to tell you about that led up to my salvation.
Okay.
I was failing out of school. It was my junior year. And they're like, you have to go to summer school. And that I went off to summer school and did a whole bunch of crazy things. I was learning hypnosis because I loved controlling people. I loved the supernatural. So I was studying witchcraft. I was studying gurus around the world. I was studying all this stuff.
Really?
And I went to summer school and just practiced it all. Okay. And just crazy stuff. Had this crazy experience at summer school. But as we're driving up to summer school, so I was in Masters. My father said, we pick it out this place, you're going to it. It's in New Hampshire. And as we're driving up to New Hampshire, I was into fishing and fish farming. I know it sounds weird, like this Goth fish farmer, but whatever. I said, Dad, I don't want to go here, but whatever. At least if we're driving, can we see if there's a fish farm nearby? Because I'd like to visit. I was thinking, if I do graduate high school, the only thing I could see myself doing was fish farming. I know, it's weird, but whatever. We all got our little quirks. I still love it today. I used to keep aquariums in my house. I cracked the ceiling of my parents' house because I had so many aquariums in my room. It was like a weird thing I was into. So my dad's like, yeah, sure. And I find it. I open up, when you had atlases in your cars, you're driving around, and I look and I find the little fish symbol. I said, oh, there's one. It's near the highway. And as we drive up, as we drive up to the fish farm, we realized that the fish farm is right across the street from the summer school I was going to.
Really?
Yeah. And my father will tell this story weeping. He goes, I knew at that moment that God was after you because the desire of your heart was right next to the pathway of correction in your life.
Wow.
And he goes, from that moment on, I knew you were going to be fine. And it wasn't until about a year later, I pull up in my driveway, coming home from school, and I'm sitting there going through the mail or whatever in my car, and I hear a door slam, and this guy is standing in my driveway. His name was Raymond. Raymond moved into our house after my two sisters moved out, went to college. My parents rented out my sister's bedroom.
Right.
And he went to Gordon Commonwealth Seminary. He's a Christian. He was the first older guy that was a believer that I was friends with. And so for the year that he lived in our house, we became close. I hadn't seen him in 5 years. Out of the blue, he shows up. He's standing in my driveway. I go, what are you doing? He goes, I'm driving from Texas up to Canada, up north of Maine, and I'm fasting, and I'm praying whether I should marry this woman or not. So he was in the middle of he was on day 5 or 6 of a fast. Mm-hmm. And he goes, how are you? And I was honest with him. I said, I'm not doing good. I'm not the person that you knew 5 years ago. And he goes, let's go pray. And I was like, I don't want to do that. He's like, I'm going to pray for you. And we go for a walk in the woods. And he sits me down, and I tell him everything. Porn. I'm addicted to porn. I'm doing drugs. I steal. I just share everything with him. He goes, sit down. And he prays over me for about a half hour. Really? Lord, would you meet him? Lord, would you draw near to him? Would he encounter your Holy Spirit? And I sat on a rock for about a half hour with I hated Jesus. I was just appeasing a friend. Fast forward a week. I walk into the basement of this church in Hamilton, Massachusetts, and the Holy Spirit falls on me with fire.
Really?
And I give my life to Jesus. I was 17 years old. It was October of 1999.
So you went from just cold, not interested, and you went to a church, and God just bang.
Not only not interested, I hated the charismatic movement. I thought it was a bunch of freaks and just people that were overly emotional, that didn't have control of themselves. And I didn't like the church either. They were a bunch of hypocrites, but specifically the charismatic church, I thought they were just a bunch of stupid people. And my encounter, my conversion came as I'm sitting there. The speaker's name was Bob Bradbury. He got touched in Toronto. in 1995.
Wow.
Started a full-on itinerant ministry and just did little churches around the East Coast.
And we helped that.
Yeah.
We helped get
Yeah.
that going.
No, seriously. No, like, oh, can I do a little story within a story?
Yeah.
Okay. Bob is rough, tough fisherman, drinker, fighter. He's the head deacon of a church. So he's in this process of like coming out of that lifestyle, and he becomes the head deacon of like a Methodist church. He's driving around, still rough, tough, driving around, and he hears Hank Hanegraaff on the radio.
Wow.
He goes, Toronto's taking place. Don't let it come and touch your church. Bob's like, nothing's going to touch my church. He drives up to Toronto to shut it down.
Oh.
He had a plan. Like, he was up there. He listened to Hank Hanegraaff and said, I'm going to go shut that thing down. Nothing's going to hurt my church. Like, he was a fighter. And as he's there, the Holy Spirit falls on him.
Wow.
And he gets baptized, filled with the Spirit. He's there for 4 days, goes back, opens up the church for Sunday service, drops to his knees as 4 kids come running at him. Captain Bob, they called him Captain Bob. And he had no kids himself. He's wearing his alb and his stole. He's like, like a liturgical church. Wraps his arms around these kids, and they all fall out. Thump, 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 thump.
Really?
Yep. He gets kicked out. He's weeping. And it was either your position or the stuff, or Toronto.
Or Spirit.
Yeah. And he picked the Spirit. He sold his businesses, and he just dedicated his life to ministering from that point on.
Wow. And so he comes to your...
So he's, fast forward 6 years, he's in Hamilton, Massachusetts basement, this tiny little church. And I was buying my drugs in that town. I drove past. I heard about the meeting. And I said, I'm going to go take pictures of the freaks because I was into photography. And I wanted to get like an interesting...
Really?
Yeah. So I go in, take my shirt, put it inside out because it had all this demonic stuff on it. Go into the basement of this building. I try to leave, but I can't. They had these security guards there, and I didn't want them to be like, hey, are you saved? And I didn't want to deal with any of that. So everything starts. I play the game. I stand up, raise my hands. People are singing. I'm mouthing words because I don't want anybody to be like, hey, are you a believer, brother? You know, like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
I've been around church. That's what they do.
So you're faking it.
I'm faking it. And I know offering's coming soon. And those dudes that are guarding the door, they're gonna collect the offering.
Shake it down.
So as I'm getting ready to run, door swings wide open. Bob walks in the room. The Captain Bob that got saved in Toronto, now ministering. And he had the biggest nose I'd ever seen on a human man. And I sat back in my chair because I literally said, what is going to come out of a man with something like that on his face? And it wasn't the Holy Spirit, it was his nose. And I sat there, and he preaches horribly. He was never a good preacher. But at the end of the message, he goes, Jesus loves you. And as he said it, love dropped into the room. And I felt love for the first time.
Just like that?
Just
wow.
Wash over me. And I started to weep. And then he said, not only does he love you, but he wants to use you. And as soon as he said that, my first encounter was with love. The second one was with power. And power dropped on me. And I'm shaking and I'm weeping.
Started shaking?
Shaking.
Like
weeping.
shaking.
Like I couldn't stop. Yeah, like just trembling, shaking and weeping. And my jaw was moving. And I'm just weeping uncontrollably with a realization of his love. And not only does he love me, he wants to use me. Me? How could he use me? You know, it was, and then he said, not only does he want to use you, but he's going to do it tonight. And I ran forward. Bob laid his hands on me. I fell out. I'm out in the power of the Holy Spirit. I go into full-on visitation, prophetic experience, whatever you want to call it.
And you're shaking on the ground.
I'm shaking violently on the ground.
Like Stacy?
No.
But
about halfway there.
Okay.
And I'm in the fetal position. And I begin to see things. I begin to hear things. I hear the voice of the Father. He calls me. I give my life to the Lord on the ground alone. I feel all darkness lift off of me.
Really?
Yep.
You felt delivered.
Totally set free. I was set free from every single thing except for my addiction to cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And that was gone in like a month.
Wow.
After that. And so I'm shaking on the floor, and the Lord calls me. He says, I'm calling you. And I was blown away at how much sin was in my life. I could see it. Conviction of how unholy I was pierced my heart.
Really? You're like Isaiah. I am unclean.
I was so unclean. And it was that battle, but also the reality of his voice saying, I'm calling you.
Mm.
Right? And it was like, how could you call me when I'm so unclean?
And you knew it.
And I knew he was, oh yeah. And I also knew that he was calling me. And I also knew that this was God. And if God's real, this was it in my mind. My on-off switch broke that night. The realization that he was real.
Yeah.
If God was real, how could I continue to live my life normally?
Mm.
Like if the creator of the universe, if the God of this Bible is real and he's touching me and he's undeniable, I will never be able to deny him again because he's touching me and I'm hearing him and I'm feeling him, and it is love and it makes me want to love Jesus more. Then how can I go back to just eating my granola going, hey, maybe hopefully I can squeeze some fish bellies and farm fish in the future? How could any Christian be the same? How could any Christian just go about their life working for their 401k? It didn't make sense to me.
Wow.
And
so you were all
I'm all in.
All
I said if I can carry this, I'll do it. Well, I'll go anywhere. I'll do anything. I don't care about anything else. I give everything to you.
Wow.
That's why I love those
that
encounters.
happened in one night.
One night.
And then you came home and what your parents?
I went home. I don't remember the drive home. I woke up the next morning and I was trembling. I was shaking.
Still.
Yep. My parents had no idea.
And you had this consciousness, God's in me.
Yep. I put on a pair of khakis and a blue polo shirt. It was the only thing I had that wasn't fully black.
Wow.
And I went to school and I wept. And all my friends, the first class, I said, I had this encounter. Jesus is real. I lost all my friends. It was a Wednesday or Thursday night, or morning at school. It was Wednesday night, I think. So Thursday morning at school.
And you told them.
Oh, yeah.
And what'd they do?
Wesley, it was the realest thing that ever happened to me. Like, how can I not tell somebody? Like, there was nothing more real than what actually happened. Like, this was reality.
And you had a band and everything.
Yeah, I had friends, and they're like, this is crazy. Will's lost his mind, you know? And then I remember going home that first day after school. My parents, my dad was at work. My mom was off doing stuff. We had to change. We had storm windows that we had to take on and off. And so it was October. So it was my job to put them on the house. So I remember, I have to do this today, my dad said. So I go up on the roof and I'm putting our storm windows on. And I remember standing up on the roof and looking out at the sky, the trees, and just going, you're real, God. And I'm still just trembling. And I have this overwhelming desire to worship. It was like, I have to worship right now. And I climbed in through the window and I went through the CDs, and there was one CD that my parents had of worship, and it was called Rejoice Africa. And I put it on. I turned the speakers all the way up. You need to realize I was a depressed, suicidal, drug addict. I crank up this random CD and I go back up on top of the roof, and we're in the woods, so there's no other houses really around us. And I'm doing pirouettes on the roof, weeping with my hands raised to Jesus.
Really?
And at that moment I realized everything is going to change.
Wow.
And it hasn't stopped since.
That's 22 years ago.
Yeah, 99. 20, yeah. It'll be 22 this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what'd your parents do?
It took about 5 days before I had the conversation with them about what happened. And they knew something was going on. They could tell. But I was up early in the morning off to school. I had my own car. I was coming home, and so they were used to me not talking to them. They were used to me not, like sitting down and be like, hey, Mom, how was your day? Like, they were used to that. So it took me about 5 days, and I told them what happened, and I just wept, and they wept. And I said, I just don't know what I'm going to do with my life right now. It was senior year. I was looking at colleges. I don't think I was going to get in one. But I said, I can't go to college. I have to go and serve and give my life to him. Well, where, how? I don't know.
So you just had, you felt this compulsion to be a missionary.
So I was praying, fasting.
Really?
Yeah. Doing anything. Any place there was a meeting where there was power, I was there. I would drive 4 or 5 hours to go anywhere. Just
4
so I can,
hours?
Yeah. Just so I could be in a meeting where the presence of God was. And Bob was doing meetings on the East Coast. So anywhere he was, I was there.
Wow.
And so I would grab his Bible after he would preach. I would grab his Bible and stick it under my arm. And I would make sure he would have to come to me before he left the church. Not in a weird way, not in like I was hungrier than anyone else has ever been. And I started catching for Bob.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I said, I'm whatever this is. And he made the biggest mistake the day he gave me his phone number. I would call him up every day. Just say, I want more of him, pray for me. And I was just 17. And I would go anywhere he went, I was there. And at month 6, he goes, kid, like, I'm going to make a trip to Paraguay. Do you want to come? And I said, yeah, I want to go. And he put together a team. Annabelle Walno was on that trip.
No, Lance Walno was she married to him at that time?
Oh, yeah. So Lance had a church in Cranston, Rhode Island.
Yeah, yeah.
Bob went to Lance's church.
No.
After this was, after he had. So I got introduced to Lance when I was 17. I used to go to his house and install bathroom fixtures because Lance didn't know how to use a screw gun. And I did. My dad's a carpenter. So I would drive 2 hours and I would duplicate Lance's tapes. I'd see Bob. And at month 6, he said, I'm putting together a small team. We're going to go out to Paraguay. And after 2 weeks in Paraguay, we were getting ready to fly home. And the Lord spoke to me in my hotel room. He says, you're going to move here. And
wow.
I walked out to Bob. I said, Bob, Lord just told me I'm supposed to move here. Bob stands up in the cafe of the hotel. He goes, hey, anybody got a place for a missionary to live? And one of the pastors that was there saying goodbye, like a whole group of pastors that we minister to the church, they're all there. He goes, he goes, I got you a house. A couple months later, I packed up all my stuff, moved to Paraguay, moved into that room, which that pastor had with me, was a closet of his 5 and 8-year-old son's bedroom.
No.
And I moved into the closet of their bedroom, which you could fit one crummy foam mattress in there. And
you moved into the closet of his 2 sons' bedroom.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I didn't speak the language. I failed Spanish 1.
Was this Ascension?
This was in Asuncion. Yeah.
I preached there. It's hot. It's muggy.
It's very hot.
Very humid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember that they put a curtain down in front of my door, and I would cry myself to sleep every night, staring at the Tasmanian Devil cartoon. Yeah, that was on the sheet that they hung to keep us. And the kids, they would just stare at me as I would try to fall asleep every night in Paraguay. I didn't speak the language. I didn't know what I was doing.
You didn't speak the language? You're 17.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And that's when you met your wife.
Yeah, so it was about 6 months. 6 months later, I'm at this little church, and Bob's preaching. So Bob would go in and out. I had stayed there, and anytime he would come in, we would go and do meetings. And so I walked in this church, and Bob's preaches, and then I would minister. I would catch for him, and he'd say, you go minister, points. We go, and I was ministering, and my wife walked up to me. She goes, hey, I see you don't speak the language. Do you need help translating? And I said, that would be awesome.
So she spoke English.
Because this is like stories within stories. So she had good friends that were missionaries.
Right.
She was the first, I think, in her family to get saved. So she would go hang out with missionaries. This is why discipleship is so important. And adults need to take in kids to mentor.
Wow.
Like I was taken in by Bob. Moosey was taken in by this missionary family. And she became a part of their little family. So she would go spend time with the missionaries. And they were making a trip back to North Carolina where they were living for like 2 weeks. And on that trip, they were going to go and visit Toronto because they heard God was moving. So they invited my wife at, 18 years old. My wife's a couple of years older than me. They invited her to come to North Carolina with them. They drove up to Toronto.
Right.
And she was there. And she experienced Toronto, got incredibly touched. Came back to Paraguay, was longing for that encounter again. And she hears, hey, there's this young blonde guy and this other guy, Bob, and the meetings are kind of like Toronto.
Wow.
And so she ends up at our meeting, and she just says, can I help? And so when we lost our original translator, I said, hey, I got this girl. She's been helping me these last couple of nights. Let's see if she can translate. So she started traveling around with us. So it was me, Bob, and my wife, Musi. And we would travel around all over Paraguay watching God move.
Really?
Seeing revival. Ended up in the White House of
Paraguay.
Yep.
How long did you stay in Paraguay then?
I was there almost 3 years.
3 years?
2.5, something like that. 2.5, 3 years.
At 17?
Yeah. 17, 18.
That is radical.
19.
I was a year in the bush in Nigeria. I was 21. I made a commitment, but when that commitment was done, I mean, you horses couldn't keep me there.
Yeah.
You went 3 years.
Yeah, a little bit under, I think. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, only came home a couple of times. And
did you learn Spanish?
oh yeah, I learned Spanish in about 6 months.
Wow.
And learned Spanish
And you preached.
not a lot. So Bob was doing the preaching. I was doing some preaching, but I was doing ministry. My whole thing was ministry. 80% of the people that I would pray for would get healed
Really?
during that time of my life. Yeah,
So you were praying for healing
I was praying for
in a place where there was abject poverty, hardly hospitals.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was going into those hospitals.
Really?
Mhm.
Now, did you go to the place where the river where the movie? What was the movie? The Mission, where the missionaries where they would put the missionaries on the logs and throw them over the waterfall.
Iguazu
Yeah,
or Foz Iguazu Falls.
Yeah.
No, I didn't make it out there.
They were gonna try
I
to.
tried to.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you got saved, and within weeks you were a missionary, and
Months. Yeah.
months, and you 3 years.
Mhm.
And when did you marry your wife?
So I married her when I was traveling with Randy Clark. So the stories of what God was doing in Paraguay would end up in Randy Clark's desk, in his inbox.
Yeah.
And so for years, Randy's reading the reports that I would write to send to Bob's, team or whatever. Randy was reading them. So when I landed back in Paraguay, the Lord spoke to me and said, I want you to go back to America. So I did, moved home. I was there for about 8 months, back in my parents. It was horrible. I was delivering pizzas. I went from revival to delivering pizzas. And Randy, out of the blue, reached out to me and said, I've been thinking about starting up an internship program. And I've been reading your stories of what God did in your life in Paraguay. I want to ask you to be one of my first interns. And so myself,
Really?
Jamie Galloway, a guy named Brandon Sundberg, we started traveling with Randy. So I went to 3 years of traveling with Randy. The third year, I reconnected with my wife.
So that's 6 years now then. 3 years as missionary,
Mhm.
3 years with Randy,
Yeah.
and you can reconnected with her and you get married.
Yep. Get married immediately.
Wow.
Just, hey, I want you to be my wife. And we were married 3 months later.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And you have been a missionary family ever since. You went from Randy Clark's, then to Iris.
3
and
years.
now you're leading the global Iris missions movement with 50 to 75 bases, thousands of churches,
Yeah.
missionaries all around the world.
Yeah.
And you're part of the cutting edge. And right now, where the martyrs are in Mozambique presently, and you're 39 and you have a beard.
Wesley, you are way too kind, but I need to say this. It's very important. I am not the leader of this. I get to be one of the voices. I have a title and I love it and I do lead. But honestly, my whole job is to serve all of these amazing hidden ones on the ground.
Wow.
So yes, I do have to call the shots and I have to sign papers, but Heidi and Roland modeled something, and that is hidden. That's the river runs in the lowest place. I don't care about my title. I'm one of a team of amazing missions-hearted people that get to serve and run. And so I sometimes I hate having my title. I'm one of the team, and because of what God's done in my life, yes, I'm more out there than others.
Wow.
But my heart is to call those who have been touched and are just floundering around and just be like, come on, you have something to give, and what God did in your life, He can do it on the field. My call is to just plant people in the nations.
Wow.
And and watch them encounter Jesus. Because if He can do it with me, He can do it with anyone.
Absolutely. What's your mother's name?
Martha.
Martha. And your father?
Murray.
Martha and Murray, thank you for your life in God. Thank you for raising such a fine young son. And you did the best you could, and God did the rest. And here we are, all these many years later, and we're still celebrating. So God bless you. And, if you have a son that's lost, like Will Hart or like Wesley Campbell, believe that they're going to come to Christ. My mother died when I was 18, 2 days before I was 18, of bone cancer. But before she died, she had a vision of me. And she said to my aunt when she came in, she says, "Isn't it wonderful about Wesley?" My aunt said, "What?" And she said, "He's become a preacher of the gospel. And everywhere he goes, people are coming to Christ." And she died. I wasn't saved. So Martha, Murray, mother, father, wherever you are, pray for your children. And Will can come to Christ. Wesley can come to Christ. Your sons and daughters will come to Christ. So God bless you. Please go on the website, irisglobal.com, and give something now. Give today. Give a large gift, because they're feeding 35,000 people every day in Mozambique. Pemba, my wife is on the board for 15 years. We're totally connected to Heidi and Roland Baker. They have a refugee crisis happening right now. There's like up to going to be a million refugees because of the slaughter that's going on in northern Mozambique. And I want you to give, and God bless you. If you want to get the other conversion stories, go to Shiloh Global and download the app, Shiloh Global app, and you'll hear them all.
Come on.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
All right. Great night.